Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the take for Market Rebellion on this Thursday. And I'll tell you what, we talk about intraday, we talk about movement, we talk about all these things a lot when we're here on the take. I'll tell you what, the yo-yo moves that we are seeing in the market right now are absolutely extraordinary. The ups, the downs, intraday movement has absolutely been there. And it is getting more and more reflected by what we are seeing in the volatility index itself, the VIX, because the VIX has been going up. And yet when you really look at some of the movement close to close, it is not there. But as we say, that intraday is what matters so much. So let's get back to yesterday, the Dow itself. It was all over the place. It was moving and shaking, and it literally turned and burned towards the end of the day and actually recovered off of some of the selling that it had as well, actually finishing up about 97 points. Opposite going on, and we were talking about this disconnect really going on with the Nasdaq yesterday. It was also started off the day very solid. It was moving to the upside. It was up triple digits, about 100 points or thereabouts. Then very rapidly kind of returned towards that flat area, sold off this, that, the other. By the time we closed, finished down about 50 points on the Nasdaq. So you get the idea of what really started to happen just a few days ago with this disconnect. For a while there, we were moving in sort of a concert together. We were looking at the Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq sort of moving somewhat together. And now we're seeing more and more of that disconnect hitting in. So take a look over at crude oil. It actually looked pretty solid yesterday, holding up in that 65 range. But it's one of those things where we've watched this movement. When I go back to November when it was $38, and this move that's been very, very solid. But there's been some push to the upside, a little back and fill, little push to the upside. And that seems to be where we find ourselves right now as we've tested this 65 level on a couple of occasions, and then just kind of broken back just a little bit, a dollar or two. So again, we're sitting there in that same kind of a range. I talked about volatility, 18 to about 19 and a half in terms of that range yesterday for volatility. So edging closer and closer to 20, finished up about 19 on the VIX yesterday, just a little bit above that. And we had some decent volume yesterday, a little bit off of where we were the day before, but 33.5 million, nothing to sneeze at. So a pretty solid day there. Now, it was energy that was strong and continued to be strong in one of the leadership roles throughout the trading session. You also had materials. We had technology started off okay, but then we started shifting around a little bit. Semiconductors as well as biotech also just sort of shifting around a little bit. And as I mentioned, we finished in the Nasdaq yesterday down just about 50 points. Not a huge move, but still a decent move yesterday. So in terms of some of what really stood out yesterday, however, Bitcoin certainly is in that category. Bitcoin had a really nice, powerful move to the upside. It was up about 6% early. I think it closed when it was still up about 4.5% yesterday, just around that 57,000 level. We're seeing a little bit of a pullback today, but so that has been the story with Bitcoin. This incredible recovery after just a few weeks ago, we were looking at Bitcoin and it had been trading towards that 60,000 level, got all the way down 51,000, then started this move back to the upside. So Bitcoin certainly has been in focus. It certainly has been covered a lot on the financial news networks. There's no doubt about that. And for a lot of the right reasons, because it's been a very, very active trade and a lot more attention brought to it, including today with PayPal, if you had a chance to see that on CNBC. Lockdown stocks. I look at Peloton. Now, this is a stock that forever I was catching flack from a lot of people about, why aren't you on this bandwagon? And I've been around long enough that I can tell you, a lot of those home equipment stocks tend to end up being clothes hangers for people eventually. And it usually happens very, very rapidly. Well, Peloton's been easing back anyway, and it's been steadily kind of pulling off of those highs as the reopen has started to expand, as vaccines have been distributed. And the news yesterday certainly causing a lot of angst because of the fact that they were having to recall the Tread plus the Tread, and a lot of folks got very, very nervous about that. Stock was down about 15% yesterday. So got slammed pretty big when you consider what those dollar amounts are for those types of machines. I think the Tread Plus is somewhere well over $4,000. I think the other one is somewhere in the 2,500 level or something like that. So certainly is something, but they do have a great balance sheet. There's a lot of positives about this company, and I don't want to just, crap all over them, but I will say, it's an interesting thing because when you look at valuation, which is something that I like to talk about all the time with a lot of these high flyers that we have talked about, where they have either no multiple or extremely high multiples, they are a news story away from some serious moves to the downside and some pullbacks. And that's just, I think, an example of what we're seeing in Peloton right now. So certainly you look at today and things look pretty solid really at the very beginning of the day. I was looking at the Dow up about 40 points in the pre-market. You had the Nasdaq up about 20 points. You had the S&P participating just a little bit up, maybe 4 or 5 points, something like that. And then as we got quickly into the trading session and towards the top of the hour, we really did see this big, massive turn. And we had the Dow trading pretty nicely. That pulled back actually right before I came on. We got towards flat with the Dow, but it was up about 55 points. As a matter of fact, I took a quick glance just now. Now it's up about 70 points. I look over at the Nasdaq though, it continues to be down. It was down 120 points. It's down about 78 points now. So recovered a little bit, but certainly some pressure there on the Nasdaq. And again, that disconnect, and that's exactly another great representation of what I've been talking about. The last couple of trading sessions, we are seeing this full-on disconnect of where we are seeing some pressure on the Nasdaq specifically. So we're seeing a lot of that going on. As we're seeing that, we're seeing the volatility index, and I mentioned 19s and sniffing towards 20. Well, we edged up above 20 just a little earlier before I came on here and holding a little bit above that 20 level. Now, will we stay there? Doesn't. Well, nobody knows the answer to that. We got a full day of trading in front of us. There's going to be a lot of movement, just like we had yesterday, and I'm expecting a similar day to yesterday where we're seeing a lot more of this intraday movement. So that would not be surprising whatsoever. So I mentioned some of these high multiple, no multiples. That's where a lot of the weakness has been, and where we're seeing names like Zoom, names like Okta, names like DocuSign, those big, wonderful names that were the big names coming as we were shut down. But as we start to reopen, we're seeing a little bit more pressure on that specific space. We are also seeing some violent moves. You see a name like Etsy, that was down about 9%. Then you look over at Moderna and a lot of the conversation going on, obviously, with the vaccines and the rest of the world, the global side of things. And you're seeing Moderna under some serious pressure. Penn Gaming, that was down as well. So a broad swipe of a lot of different aspects of the market there, just in a quick example of 3 stocks, but all moving to the downside today. So energy, let's focus on this just for a moment. We were just talking about the XOP. I think it was just yesterday. It was definitely this week. We were talking about the XOP and some of the movement and that strong, powerful move that we have seen to the upside out of those beta names. Well, as I say all the time, the beta names, it doesn't mean just to the upside do you get those wild runs. Well, we're seeing that to the downside today, as a matter of fact. Last I looked, it was down about 2.5%, and many of those names clearly are under some serious pressure today. So that is just a great example of what we're talking about volatility and some of that intraday volatility or day-to-day volatility, and certainly in the energy space and that the beta names of the energy space, that's where you're going to see a lot of that movement. So the second thing that really stands out for me today is in the biotech world, and I just mentioned Moderna, but how about Novavax, another vaccine maker? This is a pretty interesting stock. It was look at this name, 52 weeks. The low is around 17, the high is around 330, and it's trading somewhere close to, call it 160. Now, that gives you a little example of just how wild a ride things can be. And stock down about 6% today, same reasons that we are seeing right now for Moderna. So you're seeing a little bit of pressure right now on some of those vaccine makers as we start to get a lot more coverage of how they're going to handle things going forward, specifically, as I say, in the international space. Got 2 unusuals for you, and then I'm going to get out of here. And by the way, I will be on the 5 o'clock show tonight, Fast Money, with Melissa Lee and the gang. So looking forward to that. That should be a lot of fun. I also got the bull shirt on. So what does that mean? Well, that's the brand that we've got down at the Minnesotan. And at the Minnesotan, a portion of the proceeds of all the sales of anything that's part of the giddy up, as they call it. So I've got giddy up, I've got the bull, and I've got the take. All of those, a certain percentage of the proceeds do go to the Twin Cities Lyme Foundation, which is fantastic. Let's remember, this is Lyme Awareness Month, May. So anything and everything can help. And I encourage you to do the best you can to not only donate, but be a part of that May 21st gala that we've got. So unusual option activity. Fisker, FSR. Now, this is another, we were talking about batteries. We've been talking about the EV space itself and all of the action that we have been seeing in there. Well, today it's Fisker and FSR trading around 11.5 bucks. I'm not sure where it's trading now, but when it was trading 11.5, We had a buyer of 6,700 of the May 14th expiring, the 13 calls. So in other words, you're going out call it a week and a couple of days. So next Friday, not this Friday, next Friday, you're going out to May 14th expiration, and you're looking for the stock to make a move towards that 13 level. If it goes into a faster move to the upside, those options will move. They were going for anywhere between 34 cents and 43 cents. So fairly inexpensive, but also let's remember, there's a very short-term expiration cycle for what they're buying right now. I got a second one. Now this one is really interesting because Stonemor, S-T-O-N, really interesting for a lot of different reasons. This is cemeteries and funeral homes and that kind of thing. Stock's at $2.50. They're buying 3,800 of the June 2.5 calls. And those are going for 40 cents up to about 55 cents. Now, I say it's interesting for this reason. First of all, very inexpensive stock. Second of all, what makes it really stand out is I have never seen this stock before. I talked to the guys. They had not seen this stock hit on unusual option activity before either. So that definitely rings true that this is unusual. And it's interesting to see a $2.50 stock. You're seeing some of this. We have seen these low dollar stocks hitting in the past, especially a lot when we had that big run at the end of January that probably lasted maybe about 6-7 weeks. That big run where there was a lot of different names out there that they were the short names, and we were seeing a lot of that option paper coming in there, people using leverage. And leverage can be a very good thing at times, as long as you understand what you're doing. And our Market Rebellion team is the best educators in the business, so they can tell you, or at least I think they're the best educators. These guys do an absolutely magnificent job, and I'm really, really proud of what they do to help people out to understand the options world just that much better. And the derivatives, I talked about 33.5 million contracts yesterday. We were 36 million contracts day before. We are where the growth is in the marketplace. Folks, have a great day of trading. Look forward to seeing you at 5 o'clock tonight Eastern time, or I'll see you tomorrow on the Take.